I have seen In a Violent Nature, and here is my honest thoughts and review for the movie. So, first up, this movie is all about taking a different perspective to the general slasher horror movie genre. It wants to do a new spin on it and basically tell you the movie from the perspective of the slasher. Now, you're probably thinking that seems cool, and I myself thought that was an interesting idea because, obviously from slasher movies, we know a lot of them are kind of they basically take the same format as like Halloween or Friday the 13th. Um, there's been some other movies like The Strangers and stuff like that have tried to do something a little bit different, even Scream to some effect. But this movie is basically taking the same formula I feel like as Friday the 13th, but just kind of giving it from the slasher's perspective. Now, we basically follow the slasher like literally walking with him, like his, camera point of view from behind throughout the entire movie. And we see basically what the slasher goes through, which if you really think about it, from the victim standpoint, the slasher kind of pops up here and there. He does the kills and stuff like that. So now we just kind of get to see what he actually goes through in pursuit of his victims. Now, because of this perspective change, the movie feels very raw. And for some people, they might like that and enjoy that. But I think it kind of strips the movie of any real suspense because there's no suspenseful backtrack in the movie. It solely relies on the noises of the slasher, the victims, and basically the surroundings. So when he walks through the forest, you hear his footsteps. When he does a kill, you hear him do the kill. You hear the dialogue of the victims. That's pretty much it. You don't hear any real audio until basically really towards the very end of the movie and then the credits. That's basically it, which is a very interesting take. And again, makes the movie feel really raw, but I think it kind of takes away some of the suspense of the movie. Um, because of all that, it makes the movie feel very slow. And again, it takes the suspense out of the movie. And some things I think probably should just stay a mystery because, as you watch the movie, you're like, I get it. We walk around a lot. And some of the things that the slasher does, you're kind of like, I didn't really need to know that behind the scenes moment. Like some things just remain behind the curtain. I don't need to see all that the slasher does to make and do what a slasher does. Talking about the story and characters, again, like I said, this is basically Friday the 13th down to the characters and where the movie takes place. They just don't call it that. It's just the same kind of setting and surroundings and the same stereotypical characters. The slasher is nothing original, and I don't think the movie is trying to break new ground with this character per se, other than viewing the movie from his perspective. But the slasher is, again, your stereotypical Jason Voorhees type and has a backstory that is a combination of past horror movie villains. His look kind of reminds me of Jason Voorhees meets My Bloody Valentine with his firefighter mask. You can let me know in the comments what you think, but that's what I kind of got from that. The victims are again stereotypical down to the crappy dialogue and interactions, and because we are only seeing move from the slasher's perspective, though, I feel like we don't really get to really connect with them, and maybe we're not supposed to. And because we're not attached to them, to me, their deaths are just that. They're just deaths. Like we don't really care that they get killed. I feel like even the heroine of the movie doesn't really feel deserving to me of that title, since we don't really get to see her struggles or her reaction to the slasher's kill until like the very last act of the movie. With famous heroines like Jamie Lee Curtis's character, you know, even the ones in Scream, we stay with them out the whole movie so that we feel more connected and attached to them. So that's why when they are able to take on the killer and the slasher, we feel more attached and we deem them a hero when they survive the movie. Not so much here. Like I didn't really care that she lived or died. This is my personal opinion. The kills. Now I've been seeing a lot of comments online about people, really commending the kills, but as a horror movie aficionado, I would say, while the movie is titled In a Violent Nature and the kills are violent, I don't think the movie does a good job in making the kills really, to me, intense or squirmy enough. Yes, they are grotesque, but I feel like because the movie is very raw and it kind of has sometimes that B movie feel, we don't do a good enough, I don't feel like, with the camera angles and the shots. It just doesn't build up enough intensity. And when the kills do happen, it almost seems like they were waiting for it. And, it just didn't seem very, it didn't seem very, intense. It just didn't seem very intense to me to make me feel like, oh my gosh, this person got killed. I think even more like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like the 2003 one. Yes, you can. I know a lot of people don't like that movie, but for me, I feel like there was a lot of kills in there that kind of got like, oh crap, I gotta go, I'm about to get killed, or oh that crap, that person got killed and did all this stuff. Like it was just very, intense, and it got you squirmy and scared and like thrilled. I just don't think these kills did that too much. Again, they kind of all follow this kind of stereotypical kills you would expect from like a Friday the 13th movie. And really, for me, the only one scene in the movie where they try to do something new, even at that, again, it doesn't do enough to make the viewer squirm. Like, it takes too long, I feel like, for the scene, and there's not enough, like, reaction from the victim to where it's just like they're just letting it happen to them. So I just didn't really get that this was good. Like, yes, the kills are grotesque and they are, they are violent, I guess, but I just didn't think that they were good enough. Um, this is basically a live action version of the popular 2016 horror survival video game Dead by Daylight. And if you're not familiar with that game, it's a video game where you can play as various horror movie killers and chase victims around and kill them, or you can be the survivors and try to survive the killers. Um, to be honest, though, the game is probably more thrilling and suspenseful than this movie. I remember playing it when it first came out with some friends, and like no joke, there are a lot of scenes from this movie that remind me of the game where the killer is just walking and you were doing the same thing in that game, but there are interactions with the victims that kind of make the game, fun to play. And as a survivor, there's stuff you can do. So to me, the game was, better than this movie, even though these scenes felt like they were straight up out of the video game. Ironically enough, there's another movie in the works, supposedly, from Jason Blum and Jason Vaughn, that is supposed to be more of like a real live adaptation of this video game. And to me, with those two behind the camera, I feel like that would be a better version of this movie if done right. So I'm really looking forward to that when it comes out. Now, for my overall movie going experience, I I already knew about this movie and what it was going to give me. So going into it, I wanted to see the movie. I didn't know exactly what I was going to get out of it altogether because obviously I hadn't seen the movie yet. But I knew going in what I was going to, some type of expectation that's going to be from the killer's perspective. I don't think that my audience knew that going in. I think they thought this was going to be like a regular slasher movie because that's how the poster and the tagline kind of make it up for the movie. But after the first sequence of the movie, where we're basically seeing the killer, come back and walk around the time we got to the victims actually being introduced and we got to hear this crappy dialogue, there were quite a few people in my theater who actually got up and left. They just left. They never came back. I can only assume that there are many others out there who saw the movie and probably walked out as well, feeling disappointed. Um, Again, I think they were expecting a traditional slasher movie and they weren't really interested in seeing a movie primarily from the perspective of the slasher. Again, I sat through the whole thing and watched it, but there were a couple times where I was getting kind of sleepy. It's a slow burn. And saying that, I did want to talk about the movie's future. Um, it doesn't seem to bode very well that people were walking out. I don't think this movie is getting that great of. I know it's getting good critic scores, but not very good audience scores. Again, I know there's always a difference between critics and an audience. I think that the critics, look at it from more of an artist's perspective versus audience that want to see it for, enjoyment perspective. But according to Box Office Mojo, as of this recording, the movie has earned $1 million in its release, which to me is respectable. And I feel for a theatrical B movie, that's really good. I will say that it will do more in the bulk of its business on digital, where people are going to probably rent this or buy this. Again, thinking that it's going to be a traditional slash movie if you already know what it is. And, they'll make money that way. And then I think it'll also really good getting an even larger audience on streaming when it hits streaming. This is from IFC, so I don't know if it's going to be, and maybe like on Amazon or something like that. I don't know where it's going to go exactly, but I think it'll gain a larger audience on that, and a lot of people will pick it up. Maybe if it gets to Netflix, maybe it'll even larger because a lot of people like to watch anything on Netflix. The movie was left open for a sequel, and director Chris Nash has hinted that a sequel could happen, but might be a little bit different than what the current movie is, which I think would be a good way to go. Maybe it'll go back to the traditional slasher movie approach that people are used to and that formula, and then that would probably be better. So, for my final thoughts and rating, while I give director Chris Nash kudos for trying something new with his fresh take on the slasher horror movie genre, I think it gives viewers an unseen perspective that ultimately leaves viewers bored and strips the movie of the scare and suspense that makes slasher movies great. Um, who should see this movie? If you're an everyday moviegoer looking for a thrill and a scare, you should avoid this movie. You'll be bored and potentially might walk out. If you are a horror movie aficionado or just enjoy horror movies in general, no matter what they are, you would like to see this if you want to see something new, and I think you will appreciate the movie, but just maybe not fully enjoy it. So, in saying all that, I give In a Violent Nature 2.5 old firefighters masks. Let me know in the comments down below what you think about my thoughts about the movie. If you have seen it, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you haven't seen it yet, given what you've heard from me, are you going to go see it? That's it for this video, guys. Make sure to hit that like button. If you want more videos like this, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys next time on the Mashup.